I'm Rob Sharp with Geared for Worship, and we're going to be talking to my friend Sean today and find out all about his Ableton rig and how he utilizes it at his church. So, Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your church.
Yeah, man. I have been serving at my current church. I've done a couple different stints, actually. 2009 to 2016, I was here, and then I served in Florida. And then now I've been back for a year now. I'm on the creative arts and worship, and right now the youth pastor as well. So I kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yes, you do. Wow. Dual role. So, how long have you been using Ableton?
So I've been really using Ableton. I kind of dove into it in about, say, 2014, but it was very, very, very basic. I just wanted to buy tracks off of whatever website I picked and, throw them in there and make them work. So, but it was very, very basic in the beginning.
Okay. So what did you find was the hardest thing about learning Ableton Live?
I think the hardest part for me was there's a lot of different ways to do playback out there, a lot of different, probably easier ways. But I was like, let's jump into the deep end of the pool. And I probably wasn't quite ready to jump into the deep end of the pool, but that's kind of what I do. I just jump in with, I might be flopping around for a little while, but I jumped in. But the hardest part was just figuring out the workflow. There's two different views that I still get them mixed up, arrangement view and session view. I don't know which one is which. I just know how to work in which one. And I guess just learning the ins and outs of 10 different ways to skin a cat, as we say in the Ableton world. Absolutely.
And people still, I've known people who work in Ableton for years and they still get, okay, which is which? I tell people, if you think of it this way, if you can see the arrangement, it's arrangement view.
Ooh, okay.
And then if it looks like a mixing board to you, it's a recording session. So session view. So that might be a way you can remember it.
Right here.
So, and for all of you guys watching, Sean and I know each other through the Experience Conference. And we serve on the ministry team there together, and we have been friends for how long have we?
7 years, Rob. 7.
7 years?
7. I really think it's 7 years.
Wow.
This is number 10 for the conference, and yeah.
Wow, how about that? Well, so Sean, I don't believe you were doing Ableton when I first met you.
No.
And then when you moved back, that's when you kind of reached.
Actually, Rob.
Do I?
When I found out that I wanted to try Ableton, and I found out what you were doing with Ableton, it scared me. So I was like, "There's no way I could ever do that."
So yeah, Sean reached out to me, and I happened to be out in Arizona at another friend's church who is also on the Experience Conference, DeAndre, and I was doing some setup work of his MIDI playback system, and Sean said, "Hey, can you come out here for a day and spend a day with me?" And that was a fun time, and we just hit workflow. And to be honest, he had a pretty good handle on things, more than most. And we just kind of tweaked some things. We talked about locator track and adding in locators. Probably the biggest change up was how he arranged his stems and how all that was audio routed. I believe you were doing external out groups to external outs.
Yep.
And we went with a system that is, and we'll take channels to groups to sends to returns. And that gives us control over all the stems once you get into your set from top to bottom. At several different points. You can go in and micromanage things. You can say, hey, my bass player isn't here this week, and punch one button. And now all your bass stems are live and activated. So that was probably the biggest thing. And while we were there, we just started talking about, what are your dreams? What do you want to do with Ableton Live? And that's when you kind of bit the bullet and said, hey, I want to get into this automation deal.
I want to do it.
So tell us all about that.
I just decided that it was time to go even a little bit deeper. And automation always seemed like I knew people were doing it and I knew it was a thing, but every time I looked into it, I would watch videos on websites. I would try and sit and watch people. It just never could click in my brain. And finally I was just like, all right, this has got to work. And I remember you telling me a couple little tools you were using, and the launch pad was one of them. And I remember I wanted it to light up and you said, not yet. And I still don't think I'm to that point yet, but
We're just about there.
Yeah. Through the setup that you have, you recommended the stuff that we needed to get, and I'm sure we're going to get into that. But through all of that, it was just trial and error and just focus and figuring out that this can be done. And now it's just kind of like, doot, 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 and then call you every once in a while.
Now, one thing I tell people a lot is the thing with automation is that it's not hard to actually automate in terms of laying out the automation track. That is pretty simple. That's just like building a guide track. It's no different. It's pretty simple. But the tough thing is the behind the scenes, making the connection of all the routing, because it's borderline IT, right? There are times when you just go, what is going on here? I don't understand. It is a little tricky, but the other thing about it is once you get it set up with the right gear, it's rock solid. It's not going anywhere. The big thing is when you call me, usually it's okay. Let's take it up a level. Let's go to the next thing. What are we going to do next?
Yeah.
So what was your first thing that you wanted to automate?
So the first thing, I just figured it would be pretty basic, and I just wanted to do our lights. We run Vista, which I think is Chroma Q now, Vista.
That's right.
And that's the program that we use. And so you kind of explained to me that we needed to get the MIDI system set up. And so we went with the iConnectivity Play Audio 12 for our interface, and then the Mio XM from iConnectivity. And I'll tell you what, I'll recommend these things to anybody. We had a slight little issue with our first one, and I mean, these guys are an amazing company out of Canada. Some of the nicest tech people I've had a chance to meet.
Yes.
Plug for them.
I don't know if that's a Canada thing or if it's an iConnectivity thing.
I think all Canadians are the nicest people ever, but iConnectivity, you are the best.
They are. Shout out to Al and Travis.
Yes.
So we got your lights being automated. That was a pretty simple thing. We did have to have that translator in there, Boom Pro.
Oh yeah, the Boom MIDI translator. That's the thing with the different things when you, depending on what you're automating, there's usually something that makes that program talk to MIDI if it doesn't already.
That's right. Sometimes if it speaks a different language or a different type of MIDI, we have to do a little translation, and that program allows us to do that. The next thing that you want to do, we had some bad luck. It was Pro Presenter.
Yes.
And it was like the week they launched Pro 7.
The week.
And then we got in there and realized, wait a minute, they're not supporting Pro 6 anymore. We can't buy the MIDI module to make this thing work. And then it was, okay, well, let's wait until Pro 7 kind of works some of the kinks out. It's brand spanking new.
Yeah.
And at the same time, wasn't it the same week that Corona was shutting everything down?
It's all been a blur.
Yeah, it all kind of happened at the same time. And then your shift kind of moved to, okay, well, we got to figure out what we're doing for services and video, all that. So we tabled that.
We actually tabled tracks there for that coronavirus. We decided that everybody might be streaming multi-tracks and whatever other tracks. And so we just said, you know what, we're not going to stream tracks for this season. So through that, but it was about halfway through, I got a little stir crazy, and I'm like, all right, Rob, let's go.
So now we're automating Pro Presenter 7, and that's working well for you. No big hiccups there. Um, One thing I will say about Pro 7 that well, there's several things that I really like about it. One is the fact that you can get so many um, outputs, like
Yeah.
so many different outputs, and without having a separate device, it's just as many as your computer will have facilitate. Pretty much, you can do it. So, from a workflow perspective, in terms of signal routing, huge plus.
Yeah.
The other big thing with Pro 7 is that different from Pro 6, where you had to add on each element, communications or all that. Um, Now all that is wrapped up in 7. When you buy 7, you get the MIDI modules. So that's a great thing. So if you're out there, you're thinking about Pro Presenter 7, and you're wondering what else am I going to have to get to make MIDI happen? Technically, nothing. Now, I would say there are certainly devices. As Sean mentioned, the Mio XM, which serves as our MIDI router, kind of the hub of how we split out all of that. And I would say that is a great starting point, the Mio XM. They also have a big brother called the XL, but that would be key to making it rock solid. But you could play around with it and just try out the different features and do it without the Mio XM. Now, I've never asked Sean to do this, and it's because I've gone through all those lessons the hard way. Is that I've tried doing it RTP straight from Mac. I've tried doing it RTP over, or not RTP, but Wi-Fi, and that was a train wreck. So I would tell anyone this hard. Like, I understand that wireless seems sexy, but it is not stable. So a hardwired solution, you just don't have to think about it. It's hooked up. It's ready to go. There's no connecting things. Now, the one exception I would say to most people out there is that Wi-Fi is great for programming. As we've gotten into this, you don't have to be on stage. You can be at the booth with your Pro Presenter computer, program it with Wi-Fi, but then hook it back up and route it, and now you're back to hardwired.
We do that every
week. That's right. Everything at your fingertips right there. So now the latest thing we've done with you guys is we've automated your ATEM switcher. So you're actually you're automating your Black Magic switcher, and that was an adventure we had. And one of the advantages I would say of having an outside consultant like myself helping a situation like this is that you run into all kinds of problems that you didn't even expect or know that you could even have. Starts with OS issues, compatibility, then there's firmware issues, software issues. One of the challenges we ran into with your setup was that you couldn't be on internet and have your switcher up at the same time. And we finally worked around that, and that had to do with how it was initially set up by your installer. And with contacting them, we finally got that worked out, and then we were able to get everything programmed. And this past Sunday was your first Sunday. So how was that?
It was rock solid. I mean, we had zero issues from the time I came in on Saturday and turned it on. There was one slight little thing that was operator. We needed to remember to turn on the MIDI oscillator. That's what I'm calling it, whether that's what it's called. But we forgot to turn that on. So once we got that on, and it I mean, rock solid. Everything that you see behind me was automated.
I mean, lights, screen, video, audio. So
it's also handling, our Pro Presenter, how you talked about, you can have multiple outs. We're utilizing 5 maybe only four different outs, but two of
Wow.
the sources are overlays for lyrics and overlays for message slides. So it's handling all of that stuff. So yeah.
Nice. Nice. So, how did your volunteers, lighting wise, pro presenter, and your video, how did they feel about all this automation?
In the beginning, that we're just a few weeks into full automation. Um, they didn't understand it, but once they went through one service, they were like, "This is awesome."
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think a lot of people anticipate a lot of pushback. But
yeah,
I think, especially with you, me knowing you and how contagious your personality is, as long as you're positive about it and saying this
yeah,
is great, and maybe be realistic, we may hit a few hiccups here and there,
yeah,
but if you lead with excitement about it, most of the time your volunteers are gonna, you
for
know,
sure.
fall into line.
Yeah,
So, that's just as a word of encouragement to those of you who are thinking about automation, and thinking, are your volunteers going to be hurt? Are they going to be feel like they're not needed?
you
But
can't automate everything. You
you
can't
can't.
automate announcements. You can't automate the spirit moving. You can't automate message slides. There's so many things you need
That's right. That's
volunteers for.
right.
It is simply the song from start to finish that you can fully rely on automation.
That's right. And I think you even experimented for a while trying to automate even a little more, getting into those in between moments, trying to automate some of that with lights.
Yeah.
And you kind of discovered that, wow, we really just need to automate the song portion because we don't know what's really going to happen.
Yeah. I've that whole looping brackets in Ableton has been my
Uh-huh.
really good friend. I used it this weekend. So we figured it out. It's taken us a few weeks, but every week we have something new to look forward to fixing or exploring.
Yeah, yeah. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be new ways of doing things. Some of them I find sometimes they may be overkill, and
Hmm.
then sometimes I think, man, that's a great solution. Uh, I even myself, I learned something just about every week in Ableton, something new that, like, I did not know you could do that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
Learned last week you were the Bob Ross of the Ableton IT playback world.
yeah,
Instead of painting pretty trees, you're let's go over here. Oh, it's okay. Let's go back over here. You're just like the bouncing ball that never gets frustrated.
well, I tell everyone this: the calmer you can stay when you're dealing with technology, the less
Hmm.
frustrated you will be,
Yeah.
because it can certainly you can reach a boiling point of frustration with technology, um, and you just have to stay calm. And if you stay calm, you can um, think through a process.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing, if Sean can testify to this, is that I will talk to myself all throughout the thing. So we get on Zoom just like we're on Zoom now. He share his screen. I will get on there. I will do some MIDI routing, MIDI programming, whatever the case may be, looking at connections. And there's always going to be little challenges. But if I can stay calm, I'm going to be better off because I can think straight. And that's easier said than done in the moment when it's a Sunday morning and you got a bunch of volunteers relying on you. But
Yes.
it's usually something simple. And I tell most people, okay, this sounds stupid, but check the power, make sure everything's on. Make sure that everything's on the right settings.
Yeah.
And the other thing would be um, reboot. Just reboot. It's I know I sound like the what was that skit on Saturday Night Live? The company's computer guy. You know, acting like everyone's so stupid. Have you rebooted or But
Yes.
it's true. I find that
I
in
did.
so many cases is that once you've done something in MIDI, a MIDI setting, something, um, you usually need to reboot at least that program. Maybe not the computer or the iPad or whatever device it is, but at least that program. I know ProPresenter is very finicky about that. We learned that Jans was as well.
Mhm.
Or, well, not Jans, just
I'm a key.
Vista now, Chroma Key now. So, yeah, so there are some things like that where once you've made some adjustments, reboot your program. So, just staying calm in the moment. Um, so, let's talk a little bit about some goals you have and for Ableton, because I know we got some projects on the horizon.
Yeah.
What do you want to do next with Ableton?
Well, we're looking at just trying to maybe automate some of the other instruments that are on stage. We use some Nord equipment. We use a couple of different types of um, fractal units for guitars and such like that. So it'd be nice to be able to automate that. We have a youth room on our campus that probably before we get into all the stuff in the main, I want to get that room set up. We already have the Play Audio 12. We just need to get another Mio unit, and then we can get working on all that. So there's all sorts of stuff on the horizon. And then you're going to come up with another idea and be like, hey, let's automate this. I keep
Yeah.
saying that we're going to, about song, after the end of song 1, we're going to put a cue that's going to start a coffee fresh brewing back in the back, but we'll get.
Our friend Will has a video all
Our
about
friend
that.
Will
So
does have a video about that, but I don't have that here, so
yeah,
that'll
yeah.
just be like the fun.
So there are a couple things, in that, and I think it's great that you are taking the concept of what you're doing in the main auditorium and moving that over to your youth camp, not campus, but your youth room.
Yeah,
And that's, kind of like a miniature version of having multiple campuses, in that you want to have a similar setup for a couple reasons. One, your volunteers are going to know how to run it.
yeah,
Uh, the volunteers in training your kids coming up are going to run it.
yeah,
They're going to know how to do it, and troubleshooting becomes consistent. You don't have different gear in each location,
yep,
so that's I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I'm applauding that move. I don't know that a lot of people um, would think to do that, of saying, hey, let's mirror what we have going on over here, even if it's maybe on a smaller scale, or from what I'm understanding, it may be on the exact scale except for ATEM.
yeah, exactly.
You're going to do Live, you're going to do Pro Presenter.
Mhm.
You may even do some instruments and that
Yeah,
type of stuff, but you're
mhm.
not going to bother with. Obviously, there's no streaming needed.
Yeah, there's no streaming down there.
So, I guess my final question for you would be, how has Ableton allowed you to leverage technology for ministry? Because as you mentioned at the beginning, you are um, not just the creative arts pastor, but you are also fulfilling the role of youth pastor right now.
Yeah.
So, how in the world would someone as busy as you have time to do Ableton for two different services, youth and the main service, and do all this automation? How does all that work with the workflow? Do you have a team around you, or
Yeah, we have a team that so I've been getting the tracks and formatting them to our framework, because that's really, really important, getting that framework built so that in the week to week it's drag and drop. But we have a guy who has been getting really good with the playback stuff, and so he's been going in and building the Pro Presenter slides kind of each week. And then we have another guy on the team that's really good at programming lights. We're still trying to figure out the best way to do lights.
Mhm.
And then kind of on Thursdays, our last thing we do is we kind of watch through and we'll drag and drop in the camera shots, to kind of keep those fresh each week. And that's really doesn't take that long to do. So kind of there's a few different hands on it, but ultimately at the end of the week, it gets plugged in and played through, and watch to make
Yeah.
sure that thing is rocking and rolling. And then that's when I will go in. I'll come in for that process and, you know, mute all the instruments we don't need and kind of pretty things up or add a transition here or, oh, I'm going to talk here. So let's think about this, that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I guess there's one more question that I would have for you, and that is just in terms of, and we've been talking a lot today about the work that Geared for Worship is Geared for Worship has done with you in terms of MIDI um, remote setup.
Yeah.
So, what has that experience been like for you? Not necessarily just working for me, but the whole dealing with Zoom and with your team and all that. How's that been for you?
Technology is wonderful these days. I will say that. Zoom is awesome. It's so awesome to get on 4 computers and have you, Geared for Worship, able to just jump from computer to computer and troubleshoot. I'm not very techy, so at all very techy. So it's a force for me to learn all this technical stuff. But being able to work with you, and then one thing we didn't talk about is to make all of these MIDI cues work, it takes templates, and Geared for Worship has amazing templates to be able to use that are meticulously done on your end.
Well,
And
thank you.
so it makes everything simple. So, and it's very formatted well in the way that you help us line it into our hot folders. It's just wonderful.
Good, good. Well, if I tell you what, if anyone wants to contact you about your setup or talk to you about how you do different things, because again, part of this series is about learning other people's workflows and that kind of stuff. How can people get in touch with you?
You know, the easiest way to go on our church website, newlifeonline.com, NEWLIFE online.com, and you can search in the staff and click on my name and email me that way.
All right. Well, Sean, thank you for your time. I appreciate you having this conversation with us. Looking forward to doing the youth room project as well as automating some other instruments for you guys. And if you have any questions about Geared for Worship, you can visit our website. We're going to be having an online store coming on very soon that's going to contain a lot of these templates that Sean is referring to. And we are committed to making you work efficient so that you can be more effective. Because as Sean said, he's not a techie guy. Most worship guys aren't. We're musicians, we're creatives. We don't want to spend all of our time learning this stuff. We want to spend our time on creative processes and ministering to people. And that's what we want to help you do. We want to take that load off, make it easy on you, to be more efficient, to be more effective. So thanks again, Sean.
See you, man.
See ya.